Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another video. This is a different type of video today. I thought we'd sit down and do something a little bit different. It is the international break. There is not much going on whatsoever in the world of Everton or football in general at the moment. So I thought we'd sit down and talk about unpopular opinions. I went on to X, formerly known as Twitter. I still call it Twitter. Sorry, Elon, but I can't be arsed saying X, so I just say Twitter yesterday, and I asked for your unpopular Everton opinions. It can be about absolutely anything to do with Everton Football Club, but an opinion that you have that you do not feel is shared by a lot of people, and maybe one that, you know, has you having to explain yourself in the pub on a Friday night when you bring it up. We have collected a number of these opinions, so massive thank you to everybody on X who responded and provided me with your opinion. And basically, we're going to go through them in this video. I'm going to give my opinion on the opinion. The word opinion is being used far too many times already in this video. And we'll just have a little bit of a discussion. It's just something fun to do. It's a Friday. As I said, it's the international break. There's not much going on. There's no footy on at all. And, you know, this time next Friday, we'll be sitting down previewing a Merseyside derby at Anfield, which is something I've done numerous times on this channel and not something I've ever particularly enjoyed doing. So, yeah, I thought, why not have a little bit of fun whilst we can? So, yeah, as I said, I've collected a number of different opinions, unpopular opinions, or maybe opinions that people feel are not shared by many on social media. There is some regarding players, there's some regarding the stadium, there's some regarding the future of the football club, and we're going to have a little bit of a discussion today. If this is something that you'd like me to do again, if this is something you'd like me to turn into a little mini-series, then let me know. Let me know in the comment section down below. If you've got any Everton unpopular opinions that you'd like me to discuss, put them in the comment section down below and we will get into them, and we maybe will do another episode of this over the next couple of days or so whilst the international footy is very much still on. So yeah, anyway, let's jump straight into the first opinion. The first opinion comes from Edward, as you can see, and he has said Ross Barkley shouldn't have had as much stick. He deserves a move up. He deserved a move up. So this obviously is in reference to Ross Barkley's move to Chelsea. Edward believes that he shouldn't have got as much stick as what he did because he deserved that move up. Edward clearly feels that the quality that Ross Barkley had as a footballer back in, 2015 when he left the football club, 2016 to move to Chelsea, was, you know, enough for him to warrant a place in that Chelsea side, and Evertonian should have been maybe a little bit more understanding about that. I don't personally agree with this one for a couple of reasons, and none of the reasons are to particularly do with Ross Barkley's ability or Ross Barkley's quality. I think when Edward says he deserved the move up, I think Edward is referencing there, you know, the level that Ross Barkley was at, the quality that he had, and the fact that Everton, you know, at the time had become a little bit stagnant. Obviously, when Ross first burst into the scene, you know, we were under Roberto Martinez, we were fighting for the Champions League place, we looked really positive, and the future looked really bright. And then as the years went on, and, you know, the more and more that Roberto Martinez sort of fell out of favour because of results and performances not being good enough, you know, Everton started to become a team that weren't really going anywhere anytime fast, and Ross Barkley was somebody that maybe some fans, Edward included, felt deserved to be playing at that top level, deserved to be playing in the Champions League, deserved to be, you know, fighting for titles in the Premier League, etc. I don't think Ross Barkley got the response that he did from Evertonians because he left the football club necessarily, in terms of just because he wanted to leave or just because he left the football club. That's why he got so much criticism, because we've seen a number of players leave Everton Football Club over the years who haven't had that criticism. John Stones didn't particularly get that criticism when he left for Manchester City. Obviously, we've seen Idrissa Gana Gueye move to PSG. He didn't get that criticism. He was welcomed back a couple of years later. I think the reason Ross Barkley got the stick that he did was ultimately because the way in which he went about the move. Obviously he was injured for a large part of that season. He could have moved in the summer for a considerable amount of money. He didn't. He sat on it. He waited until January, and then he effectively, or from what we know, he effectively pushed his way out of the football club for what was 15 million quid, which was, nowhere near what Everton could have actually got for him if he'd have left in the summer before. So I think that was why he got as much stick as he did, not necessarily just because he left the football club to go and play somewhere else, but also because in the way in which he left the football club, and ultimately the fact that Everton financially were affected by this, and could definitely have got a higher price for Ross had he have stayed for that extra maybe couple of months, or had he have left a couple of months earlier. So I understand the notion of and we have this conversation about players quite frequently at Everton Football Club, and that is a massive sign of how Everton have failed in recent years. That conversation of, well, they deserve to leave because they deserve to go and play at a higher level, whether it be Romelu Lukaku, whether it be John Stones. We've had this conversation numerous times over the years. Wayne Rooney, even going back that far, where you've sort of looked at players and said, well, we can't really hold them back. Richarlison probably being the latest example of that. But, again, Richarlison left a couple of summers ago and obviously didn't receive anywhere near as much stick as what Ross Barkley did, and that's because there's ways in which to do that, and I think the way in which Ross pursued his move was not great in terms of his relationship with Evertonians and with Everton Football Club. So there you go. Fair play, Edward. Listen, this is why these are called unpopular opinions, because people aren't meant to agree with them, but I sort of understand where you're coming from, but as I said, I can't agree in terms of shouldn't have got as much stick as he did, because ultimately what he did put us in a sticky situation for a long time. So anyway, big thanks, Edward. Really, really appreciate that. Let's move on to the next one. The next one is from Lenny, who has said Marouane Fellaini was genuinely world class. Now, I assume Lenny is an Evertonian, and Lenny is referring to Marouane Fellaini when he was at Everton Football Club. The David Moyes eras, the sort of mid-2000s to late 2000s, going into the 2010s, when Marouane Fellaini was really, really dominant in this Everton side. And I remember having him on the back of my luminous yellow/luminous green away kit in 2009 when we reached the FA Cup final against Chelsea. And obviously, Marouane Fellaini was a player that come in and was somebody that I think it's fair to say caught the eye of a lot of Evertonians fairly quickly, probably because of the way that he was. He was 6'4", 6'5". He was a big Belgium centre midfielder. His hairstyle, of course, was out there and was not something that we were used to. Big afro, big central midfielder. Dominant on the ball, could bring the ball down. He was the player that you look towards to win you games of football. He was the player that you look towards to have the biggest impact in a game of football because of his physicality, because of his size, his ability on the ball, his ability in the air. His touch was good. He could control it. He was an absolute nuisance for defenders to deal with. He really, really was an absolute nuisance. And because of that, he was responsible for Everton winning a lot of games. He was responsible for Everton being, as successful as they were in that period in terms of getting to finals and being able to really, really challenge at the top ends of the table. I don't mean challenges in challenge for titles, but certainly, be a competitive team at that time. It was because of players like Marouane Fellaini we were able to do that. I'll always remember that season where he sort of transitioned. I remember he played everywhere when he was at Everton, Fellaini, didn't he? He was a central midfielder, he played central attacking midfielder, he played up front, he played as a defensive midfielder. He really, really did play everywhere, but that period where he was playing as sort of a number 10, and then, he'd step in up front if needed, he was absolutely outstanding. Do I think Marouane Fellaini was a world-class player in terms of his entire career, and would you sit back and look at his career and say, wow, he was world class? Probably not, because I don't think he had that consistency to be able to do that. I think to be considered a world class footballer and somebody that people look back on when you've retired and said, oh my god, they were world class, I think you've got to have done it for, you know, a number of years on the bounce. And ultimately, listen, I'm not blind to the fact that you've probably got to have done it for a football club that is achieving as well, i.e. winning league titles, winning Champions Leagues at the top level, you know, the players that are playing against the very best of the world. And Everton obviously weren't that at that time. We were much better than what we are now, but we certainly weren't that. But do I think Marouane Fellaini had world-class moments at Everton Football Club? Absolutely. Absolutely. Do I think he had world-class performances? Absolutely, because I've watched games where Marouane Fellaini has been absolutely unplayable, and they hadn't been a defender or a midfielder on the planet that would have been able to cope with him in that certain game on that certain day. So I do think he had moments, and I do think he had games, and I do think he had spells where he was incredibly difficult to deal with. You know, some of the goals that he scored, and I remember him scoring against Manchester United at Goodison. His hold-up play, as I said, his touch, his ability to just roll a player. He was top quality. It was the first time I remember seeing a sort of stereotypical big man, i.e. 6'4", 6'5", big centre midfielder, but also technically a very, very good footballer. I don't think he got anywhere near as much credit as he deserved, Marouane, for his technical ability, because when he went to Manchester United, that was something that was strangely levelled at him from Manchester United fans. Oh, he's technically not very good, he's not a good footballer, etc, etc. I completely disagree with that. I think technically he was a really, really good footballer. So yeah, he definitely had world-class moments. Would he be classed as a world-class player? I'm not so sure, but there was definitely games where he was just untouchable. So anyway, yeah, big thanks, Lenny, for the opinion. Let's move on to the next one. Jack with the next one. Jack says, Leon Osman is the best academy player we've produced in the last 30 years in terms of club service. Now, I've been thinking about this one a lot over the last sort of 24 hours or so since I've tweeted this out and you know, had the idea to make this video. And I think ultimately this depends on how you are judging said academy players. If you are looking at technical ability, is Leon Osman the best technical player that Everton have produced in the last 30 years from the academy? No, he isn't. Wayne Rooney is the best player Everton have ever produced in their academy technically, and because he is the best player England have ever produced. You've got the likes of Ross Barkley, who I think technically was a better player than Leon Osman. You've got Anthony Gordon of recent, who you would probably argue was technically a better footballer than Leon Osman. However, Jack specifically states here in terms of club service. Now, I really, really like Leon Osman, and that statement there that Jack's made, I know he's not done this purposefully, but it can be read as, well, obviously he is the best academy player we produced because he played here for the longest, but that's not necessarily what Jack means. I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding with Leon Osman, that he was a very basic, very average footballer that just played for Everton for a long time because that's what Everton were at the time. And don't get me wrong, Leon Osman wasn't somebody that would blow your skirt up week in, week out. He wasn't somebody that would, you know, you'd look at and think, wow, you'd fit in at Barcelona, or you'd look amazing in a Champions League final. But I do think he's slightly disrespected, because I do think he was better than just an average player that was in there every week because we had nobody else. I think technically he was a good footballer. He scored some really, really good goals for Everton, Leon Osman. And I remember his goal against Manchester City from the ball come out to him on the outside of the box, and he just whacked it first time. And I remember listening to people after the game saying, oh, it was a fluky shot by Osman and a fluky goal and he never meant it, etc, etc. And he did mean it. You could tell he meant it. He had that in his locker. He had that ability to hit a ball 25, 30 yards and rifle it into the top corner. Of course he did. And I definitely think technically he was much better than what people gave him credit for. Is he the best in terms of service for the club? Probably yes, because he played for us for 11, 12 years, week in, week out in the first team. Even towards the latter end, stages of his career, he was still frequently in that team. He was still frequently a member of that squad. He was a very, very, very trusted member of that squad as well. David Moyes trusted him massively, of course. So, yeah, I would probably agree in terms of coming through the academy and staying at the football club for all of his career, similarly to Tony Hibbert, of course. But I do think Leon deserves more credit than what he gets for his ability on the ball and for his technical ability, because I think technically he was a much better footballer than what people seem to remember. Is he the best player we've ever produced from the academy based on his technical ability? No, he isn't, because Wayne Rooney is the best player that this country has ever produced, and he come from Everton's academy. But I understand the point, and I would probably be inclined to agree as well. So cheers, Jack, thank you very much. Anyway, moving on to the next one. Texas Pete has said this is a really, really controversial one, so I'm going to have a sip of me drink before we do this one. Texas Pete has said Duncan Ferguson shouldn't be held as an Everton legend. He was a good player, but he's nowhere near the level of some strikers before or since. The fact he is revered by fans shows how much we've allowed mediocrity to seep through the club. Legs it. And by legs it, he means he said that opinion and then he's ran away because he knows not a lot of people will agree with that. Fair play to Pete for giving his opinion. That's what this show ultimately is all about. It's all about people giving their opinions that they maybe wouldn't usually give because they know it's not something that people will like to hear. But everyone is entitled to their own opinion, and ultimately Pete is perfectly entitled to think that way. I'm going to sit on the fence with this one a little bit, and you might think, oh, wow, shock, I'm sitting on the fence on the most controversial one. But the reason I'm sitting on the fence, I think, is quite a valid reason, and that is because I don't really remember Duncan Ferguson at Everton Football Club. Now, I was born when Dunk was playing for Everton in his second spell when he come back in the early 2000s, but I was too young to really remember how good he was or how impactful he was. I remember moments, I remember goals. I remember the goal against Manchester United, I remember certain things, certain performances. I remember the scuffle with Jimmy Bullard, and obviously everybody's seen that clip 150,000 times. But I don't remember him well enough to be able to sit here and say, yeah, I agree, he was nowhere near what people seem to think he is. Do I think Everton have had better centre-forwards before Dunk and since Dunk? Yes, I do. And I don't think Duncan Ferguson is seen as an Everton legend and seen as somebody that is so well respected amongst Evertonians because of his ability as such. Because, obviously, as I said, Romelu Lukaku, I don't think even the biggest Duncan Ferguson fan, I think, would admit Romelu Lukaku was a better out-and-out striker than Dunk was, and probably, players that have gone by, Graham Sharp, Andy Gregg, etc. I think it was because of Dunk's attitude, because of Dunk's passion, because of Dunk's ultimate, feeling for the football club. He loved Everton Football Club. He had an Everton tattoo. He gave absolutely everything on the pitch, and it was during that sort of time of we're the underdogs, everybody's against us. Moyes had created this real everybody's against us, so we have to be together and we have to fight, and Dunk sort of embodied that personality of, well, I'm Everton Football Club and we're Everton Football Club and I'm going to give everything for this shirt. And sometimes that led him to make bad decisions and get sent off, or not necessarily do right for the football club, but his intention was always to do right for the football club. And I think that is why he's seen as such a legend and such an icon. And I love Dunk. I think he's amazing. As I said, I'm going to shy away from the conversation about whether or not he was a good enough footballer to be referred to as a legend that some people do, because, as I said, I just personally don't remember him. I don't remember him well enough. I know there have been better strikers since Dunk, because as I said, the stats will tell you that, the goal scoring stats will tell you that. However, I think the reason Dunk is ultimately thought of so highly amongst the Everton fan base isn't necessarily just based upon his footballing ability or his goal scoring record, etc. It's his attitude, it's his mentality. People will say, oh well, yeah, but Romelu Lukaku was a better centre forward than Dunk, etc., etc. Yeah, but Romelu Lukaku used to go on international duty with Belgium and do an interview saying he was leaving Everton Football Club, and then 6 weeks later he'd do an interview saying he's signing a new contract, and then he'd go back on international duty and he'd say again, oh no, actually I'm going to leave Everton. So, you know, we never really see much of that from Duncan. I think that's why he's seen as in such a positive light amongst Evertonians. But yeah, as I said, definitely a controversial one, Pete, and I'm sure that there will be some people not very happy with you in the comments. So yeah, there you go. Anyway, on to the next one. The next one, again, is coming from Edward, second opinion of the video. Edward says, we should not be leaving Goodison Park. Now, this is a fairly simple one for me. I understand it. I understand the sort of, I think there's a fear. I think there's a certain level of anxiety that comes with the move to Bramley Moor, to Everton Stadium, because I do think there is a section of the fan base, me included, I think the majority of us really are a little bit worried as to how that transition is made. Not the physical transition of being moved into a new stadium, but the transition of atmosphere and of, you know, being able to get behind the team. What will that be like at a new stadium? Will it be the same as Goodison? Well, it's very unlikely because the new stadium is much bigger and it's not as close quartered, etc., etc. Ultimately, Goodison is home. It's home to me, it's home to you, it's home to all of us. And the day, I've said this before and I'll say it again, and I've got no problem with saying this even if it gets me into a bit of trouble, the day we leave Everton Football Club will be one of the saddest days of my life, and I will flat out refuse to leave my seat for a number of hours. You know, even if I've got to be picked up by my legs and my hands and carried out the stadium by stewards or police, I just don't think physically I'm going to be able to stand up off of that seat, walk out of that ground, knowing I'm never going to walk back in there. It will be an incredibly difficult moment for all of us. So I understand and I appreciate the notion of why do it then. But the reality is, for Everton to move forward as a football club, for Everton to progress as a football club, for Everton to move away from this stagnant sort of purgatory that we are in now, we need to move stadium. And I'm not saying moving stadium solves every problem, because it doesn't. There's a lot of things that need to be done at this football club for us to improve. But moving stadium is very certainly one of those things. And I understand the anxiety around Goodison, but I think it's something that we have to do. I really, really do. But cheers anyway, Edward, for your question. On to the next one. The Everton enthusiast has said, Gareth Barry is our best midfielder in the last 10 years. Again, I suppose it depends how you are judging this. If you were judging it on technical ability, then no, I don't think Gareth Barry is our best midfielder in the last 10 years. Technically, I think James Rodriguez is the best midfielder technically we've had in the last 10 years. If you were judging this by impact on the pitch, then there is an argument. Gareth Barry was absolutely outstanding for Everton Football Club from the moment he walked through the door on loan from Manchester City to effectively the minute he left the football club years later. For somebody of his age, playing in such a pivotal role of central midfield in, you know, an Everton side that were fighting for the Champions League places, that were fighting to finish in Europe, he was absolutely outstanding. That partnership between him and James McCarthy in the 2013-14 season under Roberto Martinez was unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. And there's a definite argument to be had that that's the best midfield ever. That's the best partner ever. Bloody hell, I can't speak. That's the best midfield partnership Everton have had in a long time. Certainly my lifetime, and that's 25 years. You know, the three of Barry, McCarthy and Barkley were outstanding at times, absolutely outstanding. And I think Gareth Barry come in and done exactly what we needed him to. He provided that experience, he provided that level head, but he also was able to bring the quality onto the pitch, and he was absolutely fantastic. And I think in terms of impact on the pitch, I don't think there will be many people that will disagree with this. I actually don't think this is massively unpopular. I really, really don't. Obviously, towards the back end of his Everton career, he started to slow down. You could see the levels started to catch up with him, the fitness, etc., etc. But certainly in those early seasons at the club, I think he was absolutely outstanding. I really, really do. I think he was amazing. On to the next one then. Still Ryan, my good mate Ryan, has said, this isn't really an unpopular opinion, it's more of a question, but we'll answer it nonetheless. He says, for £1 million, would you support Liverpool as a diehard fan for 5 years? And this one is very, very simple for me. And the answer is no, not a chance. Now, I am fully aware of how much money £1 million is. Don't get me wrong. I am fully aware that £1 million is a huge, huge amount of money. A huge amount of money. A life-changing amount of money. If you invested £1 million properly, if you saved it well, if you put it in the right areas, you would probably live comfortably for the rest of your life. However, I wouldn't live comfortably for the rest of my life, because even if I invested it properly, even if I bought a house, even if I invested it into a company, even if I was able to live financially free for the rest of my life, I could not live morally free. I couldn't. And whilst I understand and I appreciate £1 million is an awful lot of money, especially in the current circumstances that we're in this country and the cost of living crisis, and trust me, £1 million would be amazing. It would clear all my debt, which would be amazing. But morally, I couldn't do that. I couldn't support Liverpool. You know, I mean, Ryan says as a diehard fan for 5 years. I couldn't support Liverpool as a casual fan for 5 minutes for £1 million. I just couldn't. I couldn't do it. I'm an Evertonian. I've been going to watch Everton Football Club for 15 years, week in, week out. I've supported this football club ever since I was born. It doesn't work like that, and I think, you know, as much as some people will probably go, oh, £1 million though, I could do it, and then I could just forget about it and go back to supporting Everton. But for me, I just couldn't. Personally, I just couldn't. I'd rather not have the £1 million and be who I am, and I am an Evertonian, and that is the way it is. And people might say, oh, that's silly, that's stupid, but it is the way it is. I'm a Blue, and I always will be a Blue, and I'll never, ever, ever, ever consider being a Liverpool fan. Never, ever, ever. You know, even if Liverpool were the last football club on the planet, I just wouldn't watch football. So, yeah, there you go. Maybe I'm just massively bitter, but I don't know. I do, as mad as that sounds, and people that don't really watch football or aren't really into football probably look at that and think, what a stupid thing to say. But I actually genuinely think 99.9% of Evertonians would say the same thing as I've just done. So, yeah, there you go. Big thanks, Ryan. Really appreciate that, my mate. Next one is coming from Toffee Mandam, who has said, the atmosphere in Goodison has been shocking for years, except when we are really in the shit. I think this is definitely holds some weight. The atmosphere at Goodison has definitely changed over the 15 years that I've been going to the game. I think the atmospheres that we used to see week in, week out under David Moyes were much, much different to what we see now. Now, as you've just said, excluding the season under Frank Lampard, when we were, you know, obviously greeting the bus before the game with flares and with, you know, massive bus greetings, and there was, you know, blue smoke in the ground, etc., etc. Other than that, I think I actually, without going too deep into this, because this is a whole topic of conversation for a whole different video, I actually think this is a societal thing. I think the atmosphere generally amongst football fans in football stadiums has changed massively in recent years, and has, ultimately, it's not as loud as it maybe was, or it's not as passionate as it maybe was, because I just think there's certain things that are going on in society at the moment that take over. In terms of Everton, I think we are in a position as a fan base where we've seen that many years of mediocrity, and we've seen that many years of shite, and we've seen that many years of pain and heartache, and players letting us down and managers letting us down, that I think it's really, really difficult for us to turn up at Goodison and just create an unbelievable bear pit atmosphere without getting anything back from the players. So, you know, under David Moyes, we used to be able to turn up and we'd create a magnificent atmosphere before the ball had even been kicked. I still think we're capable of doing that now, but I think because we've been through what we've been through, I think it's a bit more difficult for us to do that, and I think we need a goal or a positive play in the game to get that out of us. I do, but it's definitely changed over the years. I would agree with that one. And finally, from Adam, he says Lee Carsley will have Everton in Europe by 2030. Yeah, there's a lot to this one. Obviously, Lee Carsley is doing a fantastic job at the moment with England's under-23s. They've just won the European Championships in the summer. Jared Branthwaite, James Garner being a part of that tournament. Will he become the Everton manager in the next 7 years? Well, 7 years is a long, long time. A long, long time. 7 years ago, Everton were nowhere near as bad as what we are today. And if you'd have said to me 7 years ago, Cam, Everton would be in back-to-back relegation battles in the next 7 years, I'd say, shut up, you're talking out your arse. So, who knows where we'll be in 7 years as a football club? Who knows who will own us? Who knows who'll be the manager? Who knows who'll be on the pitch? However, there would have to be a lot happen for Lee Carsley to take over. As I said, international management is much different to Premier League management, even at the highest level. Ask yourself this question: would Gareth Southgate get a Premier League job? Probably not for me, and he is the England's first team manager. So it's a lot. It'll be a lot difficult. It'll be a lot different for Lee Carsley to manage a Premier League side as opposed to England's under-23s. He obviously is somebody that is well respected at the football club and somebody that is loved from his time as a player here. So there's that link there and there's that connection there. But whether or not he ever manages Everton Football Club is a completely different question. I think this one is massively, massively unlikely because a lot would have to go in the same direction for this to happen, and that would be very, very unlikely. But who knows? Who knows? We will wait and see. So there you go. That rounds up the first episode of Everton Unpopular Opinions, or whatever I decide to call this series. If you've enjoyed this, then let me know in the comments because we'll do another one of these. If you haven't, then just say, that was a bit shit, Cam, don't do that again, and I won't. But if you've enjoyed it, then please do leave your thoughts in the comments section down below, and maybe we'll do another one of these before the Merseyside derby because, again, there's not much going on at the moment in the international break. If you want to leave an opinion down below, then please do leave it in the comments or tweet me on X or I don't know, X me, whatever you say now. And we'll include it in the next video. So, yeah, if you want to be involved, then please do that. If you have enjoyed this one, please do leave a like. Once again, massive thank you to everybody who sent your responses in for this one. I really do appreciate it. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. That would mean a huge, huge amount to me as well. We'll be back in a couple of days. Enjoy your weekend. Big thank you all for watching, and we'll see you later.